Hello everybody. Today we are going to discuss the 7th chapter of your novel The Invisible Man, and the title of the 7th chapter is The Unveiling of the Stranger. And up to 6th chapter we discussed that it was the furniture that went mad, that how the furniture behaved, and it was all that strangers doing, how he pushed them out, Mr. Hall and Mrs. Hall, of their room, and there was terror and a great calm, and he stayed there in his room till midday on it, because it happened in the morning, and after that nobody ventured to go upstairs or talk to him or look into his room. So he stayed there till midday in his room, and there were the sounds of his murmuring, shouting, sound of tearing papers and smashing bottles. All that sound was there. No light was coming out of his room. It was completely dark. He was sitting, his doors, windows all closed, the blinds down, so there was no ray of light, or no light was there in his room. He was sitting in complete darkness. Later, Mr. Hall, along with Sandy Wagers, went to see Mr. Shackelford. Now, Mr. Shackelford is the magistrate. Mr. Shackelford is the magistrate, so they went to the magistrate to seek his advice, and there in the coach, as it was a festival season, as it was the festival time, so people were all dressed in fine clothes, and there were just quite hustle and bustle out in the street. Gentlemen dressed in jerseys, and the ladies wearing white aprons, and their hat decorated with heavy plume and all. So this was the whole atmosphere, this was the scene out in the street. And the man, the stranger, he was quite hungry, of course, because till midday he ate nothing, and he was nobody knew that how he occupied himself there in his room. And later on he rang bells, of course, for breakfast, for meals. He rang bell thrice he rang the bell, but it was not answered. Nobody responded. Third time it was more furiously and continuously, and still it was not answered. Later when he could control no further, he came out on the landing and shouted for Mrs. Hall, called Mrs. Hall, and somebody, as Miss Hall was not there, somebody went sheepishly to Mrs. Hall and informed her about that he was calling. And Mrs. Hall, she had expected all this, she was looking forward to this moment, she was ready for that. And what she did, in a tray, putting the bill, placing the bill, she carried it to him, and she said very calmly that, is it your bill that you are wanting, sir? And he said, why wasn't my breakfast laid? Why did you prepare no meal for me? Why didn't you respond to my bells? Do you think I live without eating? And Mrs. Hall, who was ready for this, Mrs. Hall said, okay, why isn't my bill paid? Why isn't my bill paid? So he said that I told you I've been waiting for remittance, and as soon as I get the remittance, I'll pay you. But she said that if my bill can wait, then you can't grumble that if your meal waits a bit. And please keep your grumbling, please keep your grumbling and complaints to yourself. sir. And this time Mrs. Hall really had the better of him, really had the upper end on him. People could see there. And so now the stranger cooled down and he said, "My good woman." Mrs. Hall said, "No, good woman, my bill." He said, "Okay, indeed your bill. So it's in my pocket, the money is." So Mrs. Hall said, "How did you get the money from? Just 2 days back you told me that you have nothing with you, not a sovereign worth of rupee currency with you, money with you, and how? So what do you mean?" He got irritated at that and he said, "What do you mean? So that how did you get your money from?" And moreover she said, "Okay, before I get to know that, before I get my bill, settle my bill, and before your breakfast is laid, I would like you to answer some of my questions. I would like you to tell us what nobody knows, what nobody understood, that how did you get into this room of yours? It was nobody saw you going up to your room, and what you have been doing with my chairs there in your room. This is the only way, this is the only passage to go into your room, and there was nobody in the room. Then how did you enter? How did you get into your room?" And this made him further irritable, and he got angry. He said, you don't know who I am or what I am by heaven. I'll tell you who I am by heaven." And saying this, what he did, he put his face on his face and just took it like this, and at once there was a cavity there. People started screaming. Mrs. Hall was all thunderstruck and dumbfounded. She couldn't understand anything, and then he took something, he removed something and handed it over to Mrs. Hall. Mrs. Hall, as in a state of hysteria, she couldn't understand. She accepted or took that in her hand. Later on, when she saw that it was the pinkish nose of that invisible man, she started screaming and ran towards the door, leaving it there down, ran towards the door, and people started running helter-skelter and screaming. And soon, when the people who were out in the street, they heard the sounds coming out of coach and horses, they all ran towards coach and horses to know what it was there. And soon, in a short period of time, almost 40 people entered coach and horses, and they could see a headless figure was standing there. The torso, the trunk was visible, it was solid and visible, but the head was not visible. He had removed, by that time, he had removed the bandages, the nose, the goggles, the whiskers, the hat, everything, and there was no head. And people were murmuring and saying to each other, "No head, no head, the man has no head." And this kind of talks were going on, and some said, "No head there, we never heard any likes of that. People were talking like that. It's not possible, it's some trick and such." And soon the constable there was informed, Constable Bobby Jaffers. So the name of the constable, as I told you, is Bobby Jaffers. So Bobby Jaffers was informed, "Mr. Hall, Sandy Wedgers and Bobby Jaffers, one after the other, entered coach and horses, and they could see the headless figure holding bread piece in one hand and cheese in the other. He was standing there, and they saw Mr. Hall pointing to him, said to Mr. Jaffers that it's him, that's him. And Mr. Jaffers, Bobby Jaffers, the constable, said, oh, the man has no head, it's how? So he said, but okay, head or no head, duty must be followed. I must catch him, I must arrest him. So he went to him and he tried to catch him, and yes, he took hold of him, but then he got a kick on his shin, though it was a very heavy and strong one, but he didn't leave him, but he didn't lose the grip. And then Mr. Hall also moved towards him, but he got a kick on his ribs and he just went rolling. But by that time the knife which was there in the stranger's head had been thrown away. Mr. Hall had passed that to Mr. Wagers, and then there started a scuffle. They were fighting, they were just pushing each other, and then though Jaffers hadn't loosed the grip, but now the stranger started saying that I'll surrender, please, I'll surrender, please, I'll surrender, though he had mad Jaffers down. That's it. So they got ready. Okay, if he is ready to surrender, that's fine. Mr. Jaffers left the grip, loosened the grip, and then what he did, he started undoing the clothes. He started unbuttoning them, removing his dress, and they could see it. It was like they might have suspected that there could be some disfigurements or scars or something like that, but there was no scar or no disfigurement or nothing. There was nothing at all, and they were shouting and screaming that there is nothing at all, it's all empty, it's just empty clothes. So they were murmuring like that, and then Mr. Hall, Jaffers, Bobby Jaffers said, no, I'll put handcuffs. But he said, no, why should I be treated like this? Just because I am an invisible, it doesn't mean that everybody should poke nose into my business. So he said, that's not why we are arresting you. The reason is something else. It's the burglary, and we have strict instructions, we have evidences against you that it might be. And so with the handcuffs he moved on to him. But then by that time what he did, he sat down and he started unbuttoning. He removed all his clothes, even slippers and everything he removed, and he was now completely invisible. And now as he had got completely invisible, he got upper hand on them, and he beat everybody there. Jaffers, Sandy Wagers, Mr. Hall, they were all beaten badly. Mr. Teddy Henry got was hit at the cartilage of his ear. And then Mr. Bobby Jaffers, he was hit at the jaw, and he was spun around, and he just fell, he collapsed on his head on the gravel. And the others, they were running here and there. And later on, a woman passing by the road, she felt as if she was pushed. A dog was kicked and yelped and ran to the huckster's yard. And this way his transit was complete. He left Iping, he left Cochin horses. This way he ran away, beating everybody there, creating a havoc and a panicky situation. People unable to understand that got all afraid, and they had never seen any such situation, any such scene, any invisible man before. So this was first time in the history of Iping that they saw before them an invisible man. They could hear the voice, but nobody was there, and it was all quite strange for them. So this is how the unveiling of the stranger happened. So now what happened next we'll come to know in the next chapter. So to know about that, continue watching the other videos. Thank you very much for watching this video.